That's the thing.
What is that? I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't come back on Monday when we're in there. I'm not about that.
I know. But what were you hoping to accomplish by that? And who knows, maybe it's a random act of violence that just makes no sense whatsoever. You know, or it could have been kids. I don't know.
That's fine. Let us turn on the video.
I know, I like that too.
It's a play on words.
Yeah.
That's why we got to talk about it. All right, you ready to get started?
Ready whenever.
Everybody ready? Okay, we'll go ahead and call the USD 49 Board of Education board meetings and / work session to order for Monday, September 12th. First item on the agenda is communications from other organizations, and it looks like we have the Hayes Middle School Garden Club with us to start things off.
Hi, okay, we are the Hayes Middle School Garden Club. We're here kind of like founding members, I guess. So this is our garden. It started in May of 2016. It actually kind of started as a kind of just a 2-week project for the end of the year. And we first planted strawberries, cucumbers, tomatoes, and squash. And by the end of the summer, we had collected produce from the squash and cucumbers. So this is our garden probably 4 weeks after we had planted everything. And after this, the squash just kind of exploded and we got tons of squash. So we set up our tower garden for this August. We planted 4 basil plants and 4 different kinds of lettuces. And majority of these lettuces will go to the Asian food pantry. We normally meet over the summer. We met mostly every Tuesday and Thursday from about 10:30 to noon-ish. And we would start by watering our produce and our compost, and we would feed them at the end. And then the school year we met on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, and we put our produce and then
Look at that Siri.
on Saturday mornings, we meet at the downtown Hayes Market, and then 3 of us set up the booth, and Miss Meyer helps us. Okay, so this school year, we are now accepting new members, and over the summer, we only had us 4 that came on a regular basis. But we have now opened up our club only to a couple 6th grade classes, and we have over 30 people signed up. So, some school benefits are that we have created a sense of community at our school. We promoted healthy living and getting the students outside. And then our personal benefits are we've learned how to market our items, learned how to research which plants grow best at what time, and how to communicate efficiently, effectively, and it created a sense of pride and ownership. Give you homework. Maybe? Okay. Any questions?
Where'd your interest come from? What made you want to start this?
We just thought that maybe it would be nice if our school just had something that everyone could participate in. And just wanted something that we could call our own.
Very impressive.
Yeah, very cool.
Will you introduce yourself? Oh, yeah. I'm Isaac Lawrence. I'm Faith Wonderful. I'm Doug Bronson.
Very nice. Who designed the t-shirts?
So we kind of, we looked at the internet for puns, and we decided that we like this one best.
So do you guys have plans to expand it further as far as additional fruits, vegetables, things like that, or are you just sticking with what you have this year?
We've actually started to plant carrots and sugar snap peas for our fall crops. And then our tower vegetables are all year round, indoors.
Very cool.
If someone wants to buy one of those sweet shirts, who do they talk to?
You talk to us, or, and then you come down to the downtown. Yeah, we stop on Saturdays.
Awesome. Very good. Thank
Would you guys like any squash?
They brought squash,
Samples.
and we actually harvested lettuce this afternoon. If you would like to try, we picked this about 2:40 this afternoon. If you would like to try some fresh produce, so that is up to you. We also do have shrimp, but they are super fantastic. They don't give themselves enough credit. They are awesome. I am just the adult-ish person. So, they really do all the work.
And so you're all going to be yourself here as well?
Yes. I don't have any of them.
I know. But you're going to continue and just kind of help ruin the history of all.
How much for one of the squash?
I'm sorry.
How much for one of the squash?
They are free will donation. If you would like, just take one.
They have a lot of squash.
No, I kind of gathered that, and actually, I didn't bring any money with me, but I'm good for it.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm about to, and I will make right by you.
I'd have him sign something.
Thank you very much.
I don't think they actually mentioned where this is, though, did you? Did you identify where your garden is located?
So there's a fenced-in area on the west side of the school and on Oak Street, and we have some planters, and then just this little area that we have our squash in.
We do have pictures on our Facebook page of their area that they showed us a few weeks ago. So if you want to take a look at it.
The reason why I wanted to say that was because they have taken that area that's fenced in and did more than gardening. I mean, now they have an arrangement that it's getting mowed.
That's awesome.
It looks nice. They're moving a bench out there. They really have cleaned that up to be a really nice area. And they have a lot of space, too. I mean, it's a very small area that you've taken over as a garden. If they wanted, it could be a monstrous garden because they have a lot of space there.
So by the time you guys are in 8th grade, we'll have enough to actually supply the school district with.
Yes. It's been nice because a lot of other classes have been able to use it too. Other science classes have gone out and done different things with it, and even their reading classes have gone out and done some of their reading time out there. So it's not only a garden, but it's been converted into an outdoor learning space as well.
That's awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, next group we have with us this evening is the Hayes High Student Council.
Good evening, my name is Keaton Chapman. I am the Hayes High Student Body President, and some of my responsibilities are to be an intermediary between the student body and the administration, and I try to keep our group on track and give us direction. And one of the things that we are doing that's kind of new this year to help with that is we are working with our members and having them take leadership roles so that they get more experience, so that we aren't the only ones gaining that skill. And we right now have 5 different committees that we're running right now for homecoming. Each one has 2 students. Most of them have 1 class officer there and 1 regular member. And they are taking the reins. They're guiding our program. We're giving the power back to our members. All we really do with those committees is keep them on track, make sure they get their jobs done. So it is by the students, for the students.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Balzer. I am the Student Council Vice President. As Vice President this year, my job is to organize kind of a lot of the behind-the-scenes type of things, and I also plan and lead the council meetings. We have our next meeting Thursday during seminars, so I have that rough draft typed out. And I get to talk to you guys about homecoming. Homecoming is our biggest project during the year. We spend many hours planning and doing homecoming things, both before school, after school, during seminar, even on weekends. This coming Saturday, we have our homecoming walk-in, which is a Saturday a couple weeks before homecoming. We go up and we get all the decorations ready. We get everything kind of planned out. And for homecoming, there's a lot that entails. We have all our different committees. One's planning and assembly. Another is planning all the decorations. So each different committee is doing different things for homecoming week. And another committee is planning the parade, which is a big task. And in the past, board members have actually ridden in the parade, so we want to invite you all, if you would like to ride in the parade. It is September 30th. And so that's at 5 o'clock. I invite you all to do that.
Hi, my name is Tanner Cowles. I'm the secretary this year. Stuco is not just all about homecoming and dances. We also do a lot of service activities. The first one coming up is our, I'll skip to the fall. Trick or Treat So Others Can Leave. Yeah, we partner with the Hayes High National Honor Society to do that. A lot of the members come and help us out. It's good for service. Another thing that we do in the spring is the prom fashion show, which is always fun to go out to the resident homes and visit them and put on a fashion show for them. And we also are doing the seasonal blood drives that we've always done, one in the spring, one in the fall, community. People can come in, donate blood, great. And as secretary, my job is to file everything. I get to meet all of the members, all of the Stuco members and people that we talk to, also on a personal level, but then I keep digital records so that if they need to refer back to what they've done, what they haven't done, I have all of that, and I get to know each and every one of them, and it's great. We are currently working on a new community service project for the spring, and we'll have more to do on that.
Hi, I'm Kara Brooks. I'm the Student Council Treasurer, and as the Student Council Treasurer, I keep track of all the expenses for Student Council through POs online with the help of our advisors. And I'm going to talk to you about things that we've been doing to train kind of as leaders for Stuco to help improve Student Council. This summer, we went to Student Council camp for a week, and there we learned how to get kids involved who might not want to get involved, kind of like the invisible kids. And then we also learned how to bond as a team, and we learned some new ideas for the school year that we're excited to apply.
I'm Cooper Flores. I'm in charge of public relations for the Student Council. I talk to the student body. I get them involved and make them want to join Stuco. And like Tanner said, it is at a personal level. A student comes up and they say, I don't know about joining Stuco. I don't really want to put my voice out. I don't really want to be noticed. I kind of just want to be there. We give them options on what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And we can push them in committees that make them meet new people, open up opportunities, kind of gain some leadership attributes along the way. And it's a lot of fun, and it really does get a lot of people involved. This year, especially, we've had a numerous amount of people show up to the meetings almost,
first time.
yeah. It was really exciting. And that's just communication. We're using OneNote, Word, we're using Kahoot. That was a big help, taking roll and really deciding on homecoming theme and stuff. Yeah, we do have a link in the Hayside website, so that with all of our information will appear out to the public and the student body. Cool. And that's it. You guys have any questions?
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. We'd love to share invitations for you for different homecoming events.
I think I got my names right. Okay, sounds good.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Disappeared on me.
I did, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Bill, on the next item, does that need to be broken out with the library roof bid, or can I just do one vote for all four of those? I can just do one. Okay. Next item on the agenda, just we need a motion to approve bills in the amount of $2,753,184.84. Personnel transactions, the Hayes High School library roof bid, and surplus items. Unless somebody has something that they would like broke out.
I make a motion to approve all four of those action items, A through D.
It's been moved by Board Member Rankin. Seconded by Board Member Waddell. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the Architects and Construction Management at Risk and Facilities Needs Survey.
Yeah, a lot of items there.
Yes.
I get the opportunity to talk on this. It's a matter of, after several different meetings with the bond committee that had been working through the last couple of years. But they've had a few meetings, and then there's been a few meetings of discussion with a few board members as well. And in the whole process, these are items that came up, and one thing that was decided was the public is not hearing at all what's going on, at this particular point. And it was necessary to at least share there is something happening. We did do a survey of teachers even before school started, and that had to do with the bond. We did do a survey for parents, and that was at the beginning, very at the enrollment time. We did have that. The other survey that we were trying to put out, it took a little bit longer. There was work that was done. We did talk to Mike Walker, and in the end, it's a much smaller, cut-down version survey that is going to be done, and that survey is going to end up trying to gather information from the public, the voters, and we're going to end up using the information from all three of those surveys to try to help guide at that point in the committee meetings as far as where to go at this particular point. The intent was to try to keep it very specific and help in that regard, instead of one of those surveys that really has wide latitude in trying to gather information. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. And of course, in the process, there was discussions on the construction management at risk, not just from the Board of Education, but also from that committee. And it sounded like everybody, from what I gathered, there was an interest in that. The understanding of the concern that exists of no matter what project may exist in the future, wanting someone who is an expert and has knowledge in that area to help in the process of directing it. The idea of trying to do that and having, and I know there are some districts that don't. They have either their director of maintenance or the superintendent or someone else that's really involved in it, which can work if perhaps someone happened to slip into the position who for 20 years has been a construction manager at risk person. I mean, that would make sense in a district. If Rusty had that background, then maybe you consider just going that route. But under the circumstances, there's a great interest in doing that, and I would see that this board in the next month or two will probably even have action there identifying that that's a direction that's definitely going to happen no matter what, no matter when. That's an interest. And then the architect, that part of it in the discussion, you had the committee in discussing, okay, even before we gather the information from all the different individuals and try to analyze that to see, okay, were we on target? Should it be a different plan? Should it be really changed completely? I mean, or are we on target and it just wasn't relayed well enough and information wasn't shared in the public well enough? Whatever that ends up being, the question came back to, okay, how much work was done during the bond election by school, by the committee, and how much was really on the shoulders of those individuals who really don't have expertise in, how many times have you done a bond election? That's the majority would say never. And the thought was there are architectural firms that can brag about that piece as well, not just a matter of their expertise in the actual architectural piece, but also the planning for a bond election and also the marketing piece of it. There was dissatisfaction with what occurred, and with the firm, not a matter of completely unhappy, just a matter of saying perhaps after 8 years, and it's been 8 years in working with the firm that exists now, perhaps there should be some consideration of looking and seeing if there's another firm that's out there that might give us more at the next time that we may have a bond election. So there has been many phone calls on my part. I've called other districts. I've tried to gather information of architectural firms, there's a lot of architectural firms, but trying to isolate architectural firms that can brag about that part of it, that they really do have that piece that exists. There's one that pretty much dominates in western Kansas. There one that dominates in Wichita area. There's one that dominates in Kansas City area. It's interesting that there might be 4 or 5 in the state, but definitely there's 3 that I came across that kind of dominate in a particular area or region that provide that service as well of really trying to sell a bond election, and it's not a matter of their whole plan is to go in and find out what the public wants, and then in the whole process design that. They're at the front end and try to work through that process. So it is, I think, a real possibility. It may be something that in the very near future again, and part of that's dependent upon gathering the information from public and seeing what's wanted there. But I think it is something that could be a great consideration of going back and saying, okay, is it possible to consider another architectural firm at this point?
And John, I think you even shared too, even in speaking with some of the other districts or superintendents, that some of them even voiced that with some of these other architectural firms that they were instrumental in passing their bonds to the point of they felt that it wouldn't even have happened if they did not have these people.
I got on the phone with, I'll just say, Bill Hall and I, he's the superintendent of Salina, and we had many meetings together even at Harrington because of the cooperative that exists, the special ed cooperative, so we know each other, and when I talked to him, it was supposed to be one of those calls where I had the intention of 5 minutes, I just need a little information, and Bill just wanted to tell, he went on and on about their architectural firm they had and was just saying, they made this happen. They just know what they're doing. Okay, Bill, I understand, but yes, that was one of them. But and in our area, if you ask, I'm including Salina as western Kansas. That's the area where You go there and Dodge City, Garden City, Liberal, I mean, you take in a pretty big swath in this area here. Hence, there's a group that has that kind of dominates. But you go down to Wichita, you got the same thing. You end up having, my goodness, you have Mays and Goddard and Derby, and they're kind of using all the same one as well. And you hear the same kind of comments that they just make all the difference in the world as far as really knowing they're the experts. They know what's going on. And again, I don't know as much in the Kansas City area, but same message is there with the particular firm. So I'm sharing with you, and again, it's also being shared with the public too, that there are things going on. It's just a matter of trying to make sure in our conversations, there's two ways to look at it. You turn around from a bond election and you immediately try to have another bond election, and that can be viewed as irresponsible, because are you listening to the public as to what they want? You know, are you really gathering the information that's needed? At the same time, people need to know that things are being done. There is work that's going on here, but we want to be really deliberate on this and have a time frame, and not too far out. I mean, that's not good either. If you go to 2, 3, 4 years again before you ever even consider something, but really there's going to be this time frame, whether I should say it or not, but I'm thinking a year, 18 months, somewhere in there, of maybe having a responsible time frame to have a plan again to come back and maybe say, okay, this is maybe what we would do here at Hayes at this time. So questions? That was kind of a summary, and the intent was not to go into great detail on anything. It was more of the intention of trying to just make sure that there are things going on. There are meetings. We are working on this, but we're trying to make sure it's done in a very timely fashion, and when we do come back, it's what the public, they know that they've been listened to at that particular point.
And in our discussions with Mike Walker at the Docking Institute, we talked with him about it. It was a good conversation, but it may be something where we go through this and get some of this information, and it may be something where down the line, as we're doing this, we may revisit again and do another small survey or something again after we've got it. You never know, it could be broken out to option A is this, option B, option C, and give the people the opportunity to pick which direction we want to go, or different things like that. There were a lot of things discussed like that as well. So.
And with that, it was also stated, yes, they could be still very helpful in the near future. Also, it's possible that if a different architectural firm was pulled in and they have that planning service that exists, they may have something that ties into that as well, and they do the surveying of trying to work with the public. So there's other possibilities. We're still at the front end of this. It's just a matter of being aware of we have options.
Any other questions for John? Perfect. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the changes in the Head Start service.
It ties a little bit to this, and I don't know, I was aware of it last year when I was at Harrington. I come here and I talked to Donna a couple of weeks ago when I walked through the old Washington building and saw the changes, and really they have it set up very, very nicely. It really works quite well there. But in the process of meeting with her, the information that I knew of last year was reaffirmed, and they're still working at it at the Head Start process. Head Start is really changing their plan, and I need all of you to remember, Head Start is not it's not local, it's not a state, it's really a national. It ends up being across the nation, and it ties in money that is federal money. Okay, that federal money can be quite sizable. That ends up helping with the preschool programming that exists. Well, and we definitely benefit by it. We have 180 some children that are getting services, not all Head Start money, but there's 180 some in that building that we are servicing morning and afternoon. Well, Head Start is making a change, and they're moving towards full day. They're going to really a 6-hour, which is full day. Now, the piece that people need to understand, and that's you, and that's our public as well, because it's across the board, not just in Kansas, or not just in Hayes, not just in Kansas, but across the nation. You have a situation where this sounds okay, but think of the consequences, and that's what we need to be looking at right at this point. If we're going to fold, do we have the facilities to handle twice as many classrooms? Because it's twice as many classrooms or it's half as many kids.
So, John, a question, because Donna came and spoke with us maybe a month ago and said that she had obtained a grant that was going to take X number. So has something changed since then to now, and that number has changed, or?
We'll take X number.
Well, I thought she was getting a grant that would fund so many spots for full-time.
Oh,
Did I misunderstand that, right?
Yeah.
She gets state money and she gets federal, but she did, this is not a new thing to her. And she said, I think 2018, so
Right.
there is a little bit of time. So, and there are federal dollars, they fund mandates typically at the federal level as well. And I think research is just showing, even if you have to serve less, all day is going to go deeper with kids.
We will get
more
money.
kids less. Yes.
I'm sorry, I should have said that when this,
Yes.
when
But
I said this.
is
it's-
different than what she came?
It was different, I think, than the most recent grant, and
Okay.
that was more state dollars, and she was adding some different positions. This, though, has been a part of her big budget overall. I mean, she's had
She knew
this,
this was-
yes,
okay.
this wasn't new to her.
Right. The problem is just a matter that it's moving that way, and at some particular point, it's not a matter of saying that money is a problem as well, because she will get more money. The problem is a matter of we don't have classroom space if we move that way in the next 2 years, 3 years of implementing this. Right at this point, especially with the influx at the elementary in that kindergarten, first grade class, and it looks like we're filling up the elementary. There's not going to be those possibly extra rooms in some of those spaces of having a preschool like we had before she was in about every elementary of having a classroom. Now it's pretty much all at the one location.
How short are we? We just use Washington, how short are we as far as classroom? Are we full in a level or?
That, I haven't broken that down, Mandy, to even check. You know, it's not a matter of, I never did do the homework because we're really at the front end and we're not in any ugly spot now. But definitely this time next year, we may be a little desperate to try to have some plans for it. I don't think, in talking to a number of people, that this is a community that wants to serve half as many preschoolers. We want to serve just as many of those 180 some, if not more, and cutting that in half is not something we want to do. So we're probably much more, I mean, I'm making those assumptions without direction by the board, but I'm saying I would think that we'll be more so looking just what you said, Mandy, of going, what are the spaces we have? How many rooms do exist? How many would exist next year? How many could exist the year after by looking at what our enrollments would end up being? And then, of course, in Washington, how many can it still end up housing perhaps? So those are things that are going to have to be done. But I can also say, with that in mind, we won't be different than other districts. They're going to be doing the same thing. It's just a matter of every district's going to be looking at the same thing of facility needs to a degree at that point.
Are there any dollars coming specific to facility needs, or would you say the money will be there? That's
It'll
all
be there for
related
the
to
teachers.
staff?
Yeah, and instructional, yeah, it won't be for, no. I don't think so. I really don't.
She had talked, there's some space probably at Munger, and she's been surprised that parents have given out there for the 0 to 3. So, I think that's her option as a space versus cutting out. Washington, there's limits when they're below 5 for climbing the stairs. So
Exactly.
that's another issue. They couldn't be on the second floor.
Because they're not using the second floor for
They're-
students at all.
Just office
All their
space.
building, office space and staff, they pulled
But
that out of
if
it.
we were to put in an elevator, would that resolve that issue or not? Oh, how do you get?
I don't think
There's a fire marshal law that can't be above below that.
Yeah, I see.
And that's first grade down.
Thank you. There's nothing in this meeting for, when we say work session, there's nothing to work on here. It's more a matter of just to be aware of that, especially if it was not presented to you last year, of knowing that's the direction Head Start's going. And it's really very challenging because if you look at some districts, I mean, Salina, this is their first year of full-day kindergarten. They have never had full-day kindergarten until this year. So they're having tremendous challenges just to work up to this point of having the space to tend to that. Well, they also have Head Start in their, now it's a little different arrangement there, and they really run it, so they'll probably be okay in that district. But other districts, from the standpoint of, here, we're not funded, we're not funded for full-day kindergarten, and yet most of the state is really arranging for that. And then here, the state ends up putting great emphasis of how important preschool is, but really the only funding that we get largely, I mean, there's some state money, but it's minimal. And the majority of that preschool funding is Head Start. And again, if you're looking at it, most of our funding for our preschool programming in schools is all a matter of need, those families that are in need. It's really not tending to all those other families, and that's reliant upon a community to have another preschool source, whether it's many times a church preschool, many times it is. There can be some others, but I'm just saying that's going to end up catching many of those other students in preparation for stepping in as a kindergarten. So, questions on it, but that's all I wanted to do, is to make sure you're aware of that. Probably very important for the public to be aware of that too, that it is an issue. This is it's not just a matter of having a morning session, afternoon session, get a lot of students in a building during that time. But then going to 6 hours really changes the scheduling.
That's fall 2018.
Actually, I think we have a little bit more time than that. It's got to there's a plan. You'll have to have a plan in place, and I think it's almost, it may even be 3 years of progression that they would allow, but it's got to grow each year in that process. And I'm sorry, Donna is going to be here to share more information in October. So she will have many more of those details to share with you at that time. So a lot could happen in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that only from the standpoint, if it's not just in my mind, if it's in your mind too, there's no doubt that what we were talking about before, the bond election may help in some ways with that. It's a possibility it could.
You're good. Any other questions on that? Okay. Next item on the agenda is board policy revisions and additions.
Now, I know this is the one you've been excited about to come and talk on. It always has been in other Harrington. We always look forward to this, and I do want to end up, if it's all right, go through it and talk on them. There are items to talk on and items to just see if there's questions. The prolonged or shortened school year, if you read through that, you would see that it didn't change it that much. There's wording that's changed, but I don't believe there was anything I needed to talk on that really was, unless you had questions on that particular one. And that's kind of how okay. The requisitions, there could have been some different wording that was suggested, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew. We went with this wording because we wanted to make sure it still stayed in line with the digital way we're doing it. Okay? There are still some districts that rely upon a lot of paper copies, and we don't have any intention of going back to that. So we want to stay in a digital direction. So that's why it's written the way it is. And then the security and safety, that one does need to be, it says, unless reporting would violate the terms of any memorandum of understandings between district and local law enforcement. I need the board to understand that throughout the state, that has to exist this year. It has to be done by this summer. I think it's July, this next summer. So most districts don't have that yet. They're in the process of working with that. Last week I was able to meet with, I went to visit with the superintendent at Ellis, and I also was able to go to Victoria and meet with David as well. Both of them had attended a meeting just on that in Topeka a week and a half ago. And they ended up coming back and even asked on it as far as, does every district have to have that individual conversation with the police force, sheriff's department, judge, judicial, all of that, or can a county do it? Could we have a bigger gathering where all the districts in Ellis County would get together with the police representative, sheriff representative? And the answer was, oh, definitely, that just makes much more sense. Because they're even creating a template for us at the state level that we largely would use. I would bet in the end they're going to all look very similar of what the Memorandum of Understanding is. It is to tie in a communication with the police much more. I would say that this was created because of maybe a case or two in the state where there was a feeling that there wasn't. I would say that the majority of communities, especially small communities, have good communication and that arrangement. I've talked to a few principals since then, and they too are looking at that and saying, what will it change necessarily? And I don't know how much it'll change. If you read through the rest of that, how much it really will change. It's more a matter, I still think, of communication and working with our police. So I just want to make sure that memorandum of understanding, you knew it doesn't exist. It's put in here because if it does exist, then I still suggest we approve it, just like they're suggesting. It's just a matter that it'll be before the end of the year that we have that in place. The real big one is ESI. Unless, I'm sorry, was there other questions with the security and safety? You know, I guess I should say it's there with funerals. We didn't have it evidently in this district, but I'll end up saying they really do discourage that, to use school facilities for funerals. I know it happens, and I know that it probably needs to happen in some communities because some communities just don't have the right space or facilities for some funerals that could be gigantic. But it's not a good thing to end up using school facilities for a funeral. And all they're saying, if that's the case, it will definitely be something that the board would be involved with in making, having approval of that. Okay, ESI. A lot of things had changed in the last year or two with that, and I know that there's a lot of changes that was put in here dealing with definitions and so on as you go through this. We have worked, we have a couple schools that already have several examples this year of trying to work through. So we have a couple administrators that's been working. I know Shanna's been involved in talking with them as well, of trying to make sure that we are trying to make sure that our paperwork is in order and we're doing it properly. It's not completely different from prior. It's just a matter that there are some steps that we need to end up taking that's a little bit different. There has been, if I can share, again, I want to make sure that people know all this that's being done isn't altogether bad. It is a good thing. It's something that we end up having that accountability of when someone is held. You know, someone actually, we don't want to in any building. And you talk to any administrator, there's nobody that really wants to grab a student or hold a student down. But there are some cases when you read through that where it may be necessary. And when it does happen, then you end up having to follow these the documentation of what happened and make sure you contact the parents and they're involved from the beginning. There's also a misconception that this is dealing with just special ed or IEP students. Now, The misconception is because it probably happens most of the time, maybe even 90-some%, with students that have some emotional difficulties, but it doesn't mean it has to. It could be another student has no IEP that for some reason had to be handled, and if that be the case, we still follow with this this documentation. So.
Some of the positive changes, last year, it was after a third incident, meet with parents. Now that's after step one. You meet with the parents, which makes sense. Meet with stakeholders. Again, restraint, seclusion is an appropriate intervention if there's immediate danger to the student or others, and then as soon as the danger has expired, there's no longer seclusion or restraint. So again, buildings know how to report it, visit with parents, and then we do report it to the state. They accumulate this information and then they send out information and encourage districts to look that over. Do you see any biases? Are we using it with one, gender or one age population or a certain population? So that would be good information for us to go over as an admin team. We do train all of our staff on just the basic understanding of what it is and what it isn't and when it is to be used and who it needs to be reported to. But we also use some dollars to train in every building has a crisis intervention team, and they learn the appropriate types of restraints when you're working with kids on how to do it safely. So that's an important next step. And so we started last year with that, and we're starting to recertify and make sure with staff turnover that we have everybody appropriately trained in those things.
I think there's also a misunderstanding too that it's always a matter that the students are going to hurt a teacher, a student, somebody else. Please understand this also is if the student is hurting themselves. I mean, my own experience of a student who's banging their head against a concrete wall, and it's a matter of actually having to use this to protect themselves, protect the child.
Or a lot of times fleeing and trying to run out into the street or, a runner, and that's obviously we need to restrain to keep them safe. So.
Any questions? Yes.
Well, you got the prohibited types of restraint, no prone, supine, nothing that blocks the airway. So if an administrator or a teacher, if they had to chase, and I hope this never happens, but had to tackle a student, that would put them in a certain position and they cannot do that.
Tackling a student, they can do it. I'm just saying there'd have to be some real reasoning. For instance, you'll never see Marty chasing down a high schooler if they're running from school. I mean, that sounds kind of ridiculous. You don't see high school or maybe even middle school. What was just described is probably kindergarten, first grade. You're looking at those younger students if they're. But at the same time, if you have a student running through the hallway and for whatever reason what they have in their hands or what they're doing is dangerous to those that they're running by, is it possible they need to be tackled? Yeah, it's possible.
Was this just me?
But I can tell you, when it gets to that particular point, someone's calling the police. Because the police come in, and once the police are there, then we really don't have, we would rather the police hold them than us.
Sure.
It's allow them to come in and do that part.
And that's part of the training that Karen Watson does, as well, like how appropriately to grab or hold or really try to physically restrain them.
Sure, but you have a 6'4", 270-pound person that is unhappy and is blowing a gasket. Good luck, So
Yes. And Josh, really, I would say throughout the state, what I gather with the data, it appears that the majority of these cases are elementary. And the majority of these elementary cases are actually primary. The majority are primary.
So Shannon, and because I know we've had, fortunately some of them even in our district, some of the counselors have had kids in their office and things like that where they're throwing things and stuff like that. So they do have the right to restrain them then and to keep them from doing that. It just, and the reason I ask is it seems like, you hear, you always hear the other side of that. Well, we just have to let them go and they have to do this. If they're.
But if it's not immediate danger or threat. So if they're tearing up a room, that really doesn't threaten them or the other person.
We remove the
that
kids in
would-
the classroom.
There are other interventions, so secluding or restraining them would not probably be appropriate in that regards. Now, if they're throwing it in a classroom, we either remove the
Sure.
kid, the rest of the kids, and try to do other interventions. The last intervention we would go to would be restraining or secluding. But again, that is if it's been established that that's a threat, they're being a threat to themselves or others.
Gotcha.
So there are times we just have to learn, try some other interventions.
Much of this is trying to make sure that we are consistent, that throughout the district, everybody's doing it the same, and that we're making sure the documentation, communication is done properly. Because the training has been there for years. You know, we're not talking about a new training process, but that's been there.
And we do have under the parent tab on our website, I know Sarah has uploaded all the information parents have access to, and then we also would send it to the parents after the first incident, and then after that, if there are any incidents, we just refer them to the website, because everything's right there, so it is on our website as is stated in policy.
Now, if there was something else in that that you had studied and wanted to talk on or question, please do. It's, okay. Then the next would be the staff-student relations. More a matter of, I think, a little bit more focus on that insert of a romantic and or sexual nature, you know, where they added that. It's inappropriate. You end up knowing that we've had several things in the news last year of different school districts where they've gotten in trouble with a employee that's been involved with a relationship. I know that some districts have gone to a really far side where that communication piece, that they even say, we don't want any employees to have students on Facebook with them, you know, all kinds of, no social media whatsoever with it. You know, they've gone to that side of it, which limits other good things. I mean, there's some really good things that come from that. But the change there is probably more so tied to those cases that occurred, and that's I think the only thing to address with the change.
There was just had a case, we had a webinar, which is interesting, I've never seen a webinar on policies, but it was at 6, and that was one of the questions, how do you define romantic? And like they said, you want to keep it broad so that you have grounds to dismiss someone if you feel it's appropriate, whatever you feel is romantic.
Right. Use of tobacco. Did anybody, when reading that is really interesting, they caught on to the issue of tobacco versus nicotine. That's the issue there. And if you follow it, you'll see that the issue they're trying to focus on is now nicotine in the air versus a tobacco product, because there was plenty of issues where I shouldn't be in trouble. This isn't, this is a, I guess they call vape, electronic, yeah. And there's some districts that was allowing it. I mean, it's not tobacco. They were allowing to have the electronic cigarettes, and said, well, it's not tobacco, I guess it's all right. Well, they're identifying that it's still nicotine, it's not all right. So that's what I think you probably read that as well when you went through it.
Are our school grounds then not actually considered tobacco-free then? Because I noticed the way this is written.
I understand that, but
Italy.
I've always understood that school grounds, you know, school property is tobacco-free. And I know that
The
they
way
focus
it's
on
written,
the
it says
10
within 10 feet.
I understand, which really is surprising because I've always had the understanding that it's, and I think that's how we will continue too. Our school grounds is tobacco-free. I don't know why they had inserted that piece as far as being 10 feet from entrances. You know?
Do we need to change that in this then, Bill, or?
Well, that's what's suggested by KSB, and so I don't know. Yes, I could.
Our policy is our grounds are tobacco-free, we need to change.
I guess I just always taken it as that our school grounds were tobacco-free.
Because this one's directed about employees. Do we have, is there another one that is directed?
There is tobacco.
Tobacco policy.
Yeah, there's one for the students as well, but
Well, since this is directed at employees, I bet that's a big, like their personal vehicles is their property.
maybe that is, they get into their vehicle and
That's considered their property. When they're standing in the parking lot, that's our property.
We do have it in our handbook too, on our planning board. We do have it in our handbooks also, that there's not anything allowed on property.
So that overrides this, basically.
Well, the handbooks are part of board policy, and our staff handbook. Our staff handbook.
This is just a minimum. Yeah, the other we should make it more stringent.
actually, that could be easily changed by saying prohibited for staff members in any school building owned or operated by the district, and take out the within 10 feet of entrances, open windows, and air intake vents. You know, you take that piece out of it and we're still in line with the other, and basically that's how we've been doing it.
That's the way it's
anyway.
written now.
So I would suggest to probably take out that piece of it, within 10 feet of entrances, open windows, and air intake vents of such buildings in other district facilities.
Yeah, it must say how is prohibited in any school building owned or operated by the district or any school district.
Yeah, our handbooks say the possession, use of tobacco and tobacco products on or in school buildings or property, or any school-related activities prohibited, vaping, and cigarettes are also prohibited.
So it's already there.
I think we just change that, if that's, everybody agreed to that, keep it as it has been.
And this is meant to include chewing tobacco?
That's the reason they
Well,
changed it to
they're
nicotine.
definitely focusing on the air pollution part of the nicotine. I know they are here. We have still, I think tobacco's tobacco, and that's tied into it, but definitely it's a lot different of catching individuals who have skull versus someone who's smoking. And trying to identify them, I don't think that, I would doubt that Marty or any of the staff at the high school work real hard to identify the chewing tobacco, unless they make it really visible with spitting off of the bleacher on a regular basis. I don't know.
But by not including it in here, are we saying that piece is okay?
Well, the use of tobacco products.
Well, we're still gonna,
What's in black?
we'll still focus on tobacco
It would be a
product,
product.
yeah.
They just added, all of it.
I think so.
So let's just say not one.
Next one. Next one was the additional duty license. I don't understand how that, or why that was needed to put in, but for some reason, so unless Shannon, you can say,
No, I didn't get that part, I mean, educational was added, so I don't know if they thought like there were some assignments made that weren't educational, but.
I'm fine with the wording. I don't think it hurts anything to put the wording in there, but I don't know why it needed to be. I can't guess as to why it needed to be changed. You saw the student privacy, looking through it, pretty minor changes there. I mean, it really didn't
Just a couple
change
grammatical.
at all. Then you get to truancy, and yeah, they changed a lot of the wording there. But when you're all done, I don't know if it really, again, changes much of how we act on it.
Yeah, it goes back to the memorandum of understanding. That part, I really appreciate working with Lori and stuff.
And that regard of homeless as well, the new act that they have, just leave it there, the wording.
Sometimes you see a lot of red and you think, oh, wow, they made a lot of change. But if you read through it, I don't know if it's going to change how we're acting on truancy. Again, tobacco use, more of what we just had talked about, identifying the vape system. Again, I found that interesting that there were some districts that would allow a vape system but not cigarettes that the students would use.
Okay, the only thing that struck me here is the first sentence says use and/or possession of any other tobacco product. Other means what?
Or nicotine delivery device.
Do we need the other in there, or should it just read of any tobacco product?
Yeah, because it had smoking earlier.
Oh, was that
I
why?
think is why the other, but when you take that out, you're right, it might be. more
Yeah, you
safe
probably should take
tobacco.
other. Good point. That was their mistake. It
Yeah.
really should be.
Using or possession of any tobacco product, and then there's two people with all three up.
Okay. Yeah, that's Sarah there. Any other questions on that? The weapons, the interest there on the weapons, I think some of you may have heard it in the news, because it was big in the news for a while down in Derby, south of Wichita, Winfield, I don't know, Wellington. There was a district south of Wichita that ended up having a club, and it was an air rifle club, and they would go to the school and they would shoot air rifles. And it was a big thing, I guess, down there, and created quite a stir, and even got clear to the point where they changed the policy of saying that depending upon the school district, possession of an air gun at school or property supervised that will not be prohibited. I mean, but it's got to be a school supervised activity. So we don't have that. So there should be no air rifles, okay? It shouldn't have any air rifles at the school. The odd thing about this is people who really know air rifles need to understand that they make air rifles that are just as powerful as small caliber rifles at this time. It's not a matter of those little cock BB guns at this point. Some of these air rifles are really quite dangerous, but I'm not afraid of of how that reads. It's just a matter because it puts it in there for a school sponsored or supervised activity, and as far as I know, that's not being planned here at Hayes.
Norton was home of like 30 state championships and BB gun.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. It's on their sign. I mean, it's a lot of years.
Where's that,
At Norton.
At Norton?
Really?
Now there's a pretty big gap at the end of those.
Right.
So it's been a while. That used to be a big deal up there.
Well, there was a time when I think you would take, I remember the stories of guns being brought, and they'd have gun safety classes at school. They had archery, where you actually had archery class. You had, for some schools, depending upon where you're at, you'd maybe go out and actually shoot them and teach the kids how to shoot the rifle. But that's quite a few years ago.
My hunter safety was at school when we shot the clay pigeons at the practice field.
The policy's been updated a lot in recent years. Probably because there's a new weapon you gotta add, verify, I mean, whatever it is.
63.
Okay, reporting crimes, law enforcement, just again, that ties to that memorandum of understanding. And what I'm excited about is what David and Bob was able to bring back from Topeka and saying, we should just do it as Ellis County. I think even the police department, sheriff's department will be very happy to have one meeting instead of 3 different meetings. It'd work out a lot better. Now, these are the 2 new policies. There's the health screening, and then the other one ended up being concealed observations. The 2 really look, when you get new policy and you read through it, it sometimes has a lot more questions, but health screenings is something, if you read through that, has been in place many years. We do that. What they put down is practice of what's going on. I think it was put in place, and my guess is that maybe in a district or 2 they got caught in a spot where they just weren't providing it. And they're trying to put some teeth into this, that all districts should be in a spot that they're actually cooperating with the public and trying to provide it. But we have them, and I don't know in looking through that if it's going to make any difference as to how we've been doing things in the past.
I wondered that too. I know we have, I guess it was a policy, so we'll just pass it on to our governor.
Yeah.
How do we-
So the requirements haven't changed, you're saying?
What they put down and what we've been doing is not different.
Okay. It was practice, I don't know that it was policy. Now it's
Yeah.
policy. We probably see more kids who need services that aren't being serviced. I mean, what's in here now is not just vision and hearing, but it talks about dental screening, more and more of those things.
How do we determine what local providers offer those? Do we put that out and allow, like for dental as an example, or the other ones, do we allow any of the dental providers in the area to come in and do that? How do we decide that?
Actually, we do. They've made those offers even this year. Now, I don't know about past. I just know that, again, this year I was informed that there was, I can't even think of who it was, but they had made that offer that they would end up doing those screenings.
So we actually send them out to all the dental providers?
You know, I don't know if we send it out like a bid process or someone approaches us,
Yeah.
or if we're
I
getting
just
a list
didn't
of
know how
those
it worked.
locally. I really don't know, and there's, I think that's what we're
I think dental one is new. Dental,
Yeah.
they never require dental. That's the new one.
Oh, okay.
And some providers were offering in the office, too, so I don't know that's.
Now, is vision and hearing is covered by our nurses?
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes they do call subs. So they do it like 1 day per semester. They call it sub nurse and they do it together.
Concealed observations, well, you read through that and you'll end up saying it doesn't, it's more a matter to end up having a piece there if you're trying to hide the video, hide the tape, and that shouldn't be done. We have video cameras in the hallways, we have them outside, we have in hearings, we end up having tape recording. All those are fine. You could have videotapes, you could have video, we have them in buses. You could have them in every classroom in the district, and still you're okay because you have them and they're there, there's nothing hidden. The problem is when you're purposely hiding it and trying to conceal it, and you read through that, you'll see that is the issue, is when you're really trying to keep it hidden in the whole process, and that's our issue. And I don't know. I would say that there could be an issue that occurred where, discipline-wise, if you ended up having a case where something is happening on a regular basis and you try to end up catching who's doing it, if it's vandalism or something, so you hide a camera and you're trying to catch it, what's happening there. Maybe that's how it came up. But to understand why it was necessarily, what problem occurred that started this or needed to put it into policy, I'm not really sure what started that. But in our case, I'm just saying, we have plenty of cameras, they're okay. Our hearings, they're okay from using that. Our buses are all right as well. But I would definitely, if we had any case where we had some problems with trying to catch somebody, that's where it needs to be thought out and try to end up figuring what we're going to do at that particular time. There's also sometimes special ed needs where there's observations that are done, but they know it ahead of time. That's something that's not hidden. The camera's right there. They make sure that it's they're well aware of it.
And we need the parent consent before we do that.
Bill, is that different from state law? Because isn't Kansas just one party or one side has to be aware of the recording? Both sides don't have to be aware of the recording. It's per Kansas state law.
Both sides do.
In Kansas you do?
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking it was just one side.
Depends on whether it's a recording or a video and a recording.
I mean, maybe I'm thinking of phone conversations. I was thinking only one party had to be, okay, but I could be wrong.
But other than those few changes that we did make with a little bit of the wording and scratching out one of the part of the sentence, I think that probably does it for the changes updating policy.
Good. Any other questions on policy revisions or additions? Okay. Moving on to the next item, capital outlay project plan update.
Okay, I know this was a project from the first week or two that I came to this district of wanting a plan. And then the work on Saturday of having goals, that ended up even being one of the 5 goals of identifying we need a plan for our capital outlay and know how that is going to be used over a period of time. So it's very important in this district with this board to end up having something in place. And I've said that Rusty and I were going to work on this. Well, we have. And I would say that it was last week of realizing when I had asked Rusty to give me 10 to 20 items, that are the priority in this district, and me looking over them, and I would say again, it came to the point of realizing that's the problem. The problem ends up being who's identifying, who's looking at it. Rusty identifies that as priority. I look at it and then questioning why is it priority? And anybody that looks at it, because you'd have a different idea and you'd have a different idea. So where's a plan that actually is one that is, again, objective instead of subjective? That's what we need, is an objective way to end up working over time with our facilities. I did make a couple phone calls and tried to end up gathering some information. We did end up having enlisted the assistance of James from BCS because he was helping with the HVAC system when the middle school was put in, and he's been their company has helped at the high school. There's some things that were done there, and they came in and they suggested there is a program. Well, there's more than one program, but there's a program that exists at this time that will allow you to take a tremendous amount of data, put it in, and that data will end up working at a district level as well as a building level to identify what is the suggested life expectancy of different things, such as a roof or a boiler or just anything at that case, and when should they be switched out. He came last week, showed us that particular program to a degree because Derby's been using it for the last couple of years. And there's others as well, but this particular software, Derby's using it. I did call the operations director there, Joe, and talk to him on it. Now, he's new. He just came in June. So he wasn't the one that implemented it 2 years ago and hasn't been using it for the 2 years. But he said, yes, it does work that way. There's that work at the front end, and there, of course, is that cost of that software and the work to actually accumulate all that data to put in there. But it does give you something that is a progression of when things should be and gives you an idea of, okay, 2024, You have several roofs that need to be looked at, or you end up having HVAC system in 2030 when you need to end up definitely considering this needs. And it kind of bundles them all together so that at a district level, you have something you can plan money. We would like very much to end up doing the same as what Russ did a couple of years ago with the vehicles, of not just going year to year and seeing what's needed, but actually creating a plan that he's going to spend, I think it's around $300,000 a year, and he has it so that every year on a cycle we're going to keep our vehicles up to date, and that's what's needed to always do that. Buses, vans, the cars. A lot easier to budget for when you know that, and it's the same. We're going to try to do that with technology as well, with computers being switched over, and have a set amount in that regard. But boy, this is really ugly when we're talking about that and going to the idea of facilities and trying to do the same. It's not near as easy in trying to create that. What they described and what he said, it can work. It's a living document. It's something that ends up going year to year that gives you a prediction of what's going to be needed to be done in the future. And it's not just a matter of saying, okay, just because this document and the research out there national level ends up saying that after 30 years, that is all the life you're going to get out of this roof, and you've got to switch it. It gives you that option where, okay, that's what they suggest. It should be checked at that time, and at that time when it's checked, they may end up saying, you can still get 5 more years out of it. Or you may say, we do need to switch it out at that time. Or you end up having 4 years in a row that, my goodness, there's there's one real peak where there's a lot of things that need to be switched out, and maybe you end up saying to try to keep it level with maintenance, you may even need to switch out a roof a year earlier than maybe what the table ends up identifying, just because you can fund it at that particular time. The interesting piece between Derby and then I also called Goddard, the gentleman who's the director of maintenance there has been there 22 years. A classmate of mine back in Kingman, and in talking to him, it was interesting that Goddard, 22 years ago when he started there was 5 buildings, and there's 17 now. In 22 years, they've added 12 buildings. And he says that they have been doing much the same as what Rusty has been doing, and what before Rusty, the gentleman before him was doing, is taking a good guess of what needs to be done. I mean, they identify, and the board ends up saying, sure, that sounds good, that, it's in bad shape, it needs to be, and just a matter of a trust factor of saying, sure, there's no doubt it needs to. No one questions when it completely breaks down. You understand? When it completely breaks down, everybody says, yeah, why was that not tended to earlier? The thing that really is troublesome is, in our particular case, I'm not sure the public understands that HVAC system at the middle school that was switched out for that $1.3 million, which sounds like an awful lot of capital outlay money, but I don't know if they realize it was over 50 years old. It was over 50 years old. We're talking about the high schools need switched out. It's 35 years old, and it needs switched out. But the middle school's made over 50 years. That's twice what its life expectancy really is. And for me to come in and hear the conversation that existed before of saying that maintenance, and it was, there's no irresponsibility that was done whatsoever as far as maintenance in this district. Actually, I come in and look at buildings that the newest one's 35 years old, the oldest ones are in their 90s, and there's more closer to 90 than they are 35, and say, maintenance has been fantastic in this district. If anybody wants to really be critical, the issue is a matter of, we have some really high dollar items that are going to be needed to be taken care of. And to have that kind of money to tend to them, how do we end up doing that? I know that Craig at Goddard ended up saying, we do the same thing even there, of we don't have enough money. It was interesting because a lot of people think of Goddard as, Goddard's a poor district. Does anybody know Goddard is, it has a lot of growth, but it's all residential. They have no business there. Everybody, it all goes to Wichita. So you're talking about, if you look at from valuation, it's really a strange community compared to some of the others in that area, that it really doesn't have what others have. And they are so dependent upon, again, bond. Bond election, they may have to build a new building, but he says, I'm always in there, he is, to try to get something else tagged to it. Because bond elections are really for new construction, okay? But so many districts throughout the state are forced into a position of having bond elections to tend to improvements, of fixing systems. So whenever he has new building at Goddard, because there's probably going to be another one in April, he said, they're having another bond election for another building, he works hard at trying to tag one of the systems, maybe a heating and air system, an old one, to be switched out. It's odd, again, talking to him, that he comes in 22 years ago and says, the new buildings when I came in that were built at that time are now needing to be considered of things that need to be switched out. And I behaved myself on the phone. I didn't go, oh, boo-hoo. But it was odd to say that they're talking about 20-year to 30-year buildings and have to really start considering construction, maintenance, or higher dollar switch outs that need to be made at that time. And I'm kind of going, that's amazing. He ended up saying one of the major items that was switched out for HVAC 4 years ago, and they ended up switching it to a new system. He says it was really amazing comparing the benefits on the savings with energy. He says they can prove that in 4 years they paid for the project. That was how much energy savings there was in just 4 years. Now, I know we need to tie that in. Whenever it does roll around again to a new bond election or trying that, we've got to end up tying in so that the public can see, they understand that how much money was saved because of the energy savings. The lighting that Rusty is trying to switch out throughout the community or throughout the district, the public needs to know that the lighting that's put in is it's a fourth of the cost, and it's better lighting, but it's a fourth of the cost in that. And we use a lot of light bulbs in the district. I mean, it's amazing about the thousands and thousands of bulbs that exist. The heating and air at the middle school, love to be able to try to make a comparison with the electricity. Not going to be as easy to do because of the gymnasium, the square footage in there, but it should be about the same with even adding that biggest space with the air conditioning. Heating, maybe we can make a comparison there just to see what it'll end up being. But it comes down to, I would suggest, I know you let me rattle on with all of that, but I would suggest that I would love to end up having a couple, 1, 2, 3 board members that might get to see that presentation and see that software as well in the next week or two. If you think that it has some possibilities as well, maybe it should be brought to the board as a whole, at that point. There was another plan too. Now, it depends where you're at, and it depends what kind of relationship you have with the architectural firm. But one was going to create a contract with a local architectural firm to do that on an annual basis, of go through the buildings and make their suggestions, because they are more of the expert as far as facilities. And if not the architectural firms, perhaps employees of theirs. I don't know if the architects themselves would be the experts, but maybe they would end up having other individuals tied to them that could end up doing that and make suggestions. But still, there's going to be a cost on an annual basis trying to tend to that. There's different ways to do it, but again, there's time, and there's going to be some cost to it. And I do not think, I'm also trying to step away from what I said that we would create. I just came to the decision that
whatever we create is never going to end up being satisfactory, because it's still going to boil down to me saying, this is more important, Rusty, you're wrong, this one's not. Marty saying, what the heck, mine's older than yours, you should be taking care of this at my building. And not knowing necessarily, if you could put it in a fashion where all that information is, it could at least give you direction and help you in that process of planning. It also was kind of interesting because they had permission by Derby to show us their information, and it was really odd that when you put that in there, it can give you an idea of how much the cost of a building, what a building to be replaced would cost. Let's just say O'Laughlin. If we're saying O'Laughlin, what is the cost of this building if we were going to build it new? Okay. Then take the systems that need to be taken care of and look at the cost of heating and air. Look at if carpeting needs to be switched out, if plumbing, the plumbing system. What's it like? If it needs to be. But put those all in there with the timeline and see where is that timeline and how much. Is it 50% of the cost? Is it 80? Where do we end up getting with the buildings to see where the real cost is in replacing? There's no doubt you get older buildings, much more likely you're going to get up here, you're closer to just replace the building instead of redoing all of it. But and the newer ones are probably going to be down here. But that was interesting too, of giving you information that was very helpful. Because the data that they're pulling from is national data that comes in to say this is what they suggest is the life expectancy of this kind of system, and you need to work from that. And I would wonder if we could find a couple board members that would be interested enough to take a look at that in the next week or two. Okay. Well, I'll talk to James and see if, I'll get in touch with all of you and see if there's a couple of you that can meet, come to a particular meeting. I don't want more than 3 of you. You understand that, I'm not trying to, I just want 1, 2, or 3 of you. And if you feel the same way as Rusty and I, because I think, Rusty, you too felt seemed very interesting. And it took out that human element of some degree of just a matter of saying, it's more important to me. The objectivity is really a pretty important part of this, of trying to do a good job over a long period of time and determine what kind of cost is going to be necessary. It also, Derby hit spikes at times, and I'm sure ours would show up that way. And what I mean by spike is they ended up hitting a point where there was so many things that needed to be fixed at this particular year. They just happened to bunch up at that time. And they may be bunched up because they did a big they did a big project in the past where they fixed 3 buildings, air and heating systems at that time. Well, they all hit the same time later on. Well, it does automatically. I mean, I switch out. Tracy switches out. Rusty's no longer here. But if you have that, you still end up having something that gives you a warning that you're coming up on something that's going to be a financial burden in the near future. 10 years from now, we need to be talking about 10 years from now, because there's a big item that needs to be addressed at that time. So it's either going to be planning ahead, or even start talking about, if it's a necessity of a bond election, just to try to take care of that spike of things during that time.
Very good. Any other questions on the capital outlay stuff? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Memorandum of Understanding for Victory Road.
I was very impressed with Bill that he puts a document together that no one has had any questions. Anybody that I've asked about it, they all go, that looks good. I ended up having I'd pass it on to Chad, and Chad, the information came back from them, from the diocese saying, looks good, Lance said looks good. I've had others look at it and it's like, looks fine. So
We went down this road a couple of years ago.
okay, well, Victory Road, I think we've made it, because unless anybody else read through it, it's very simple, but it does tend to something that was asked by TMP, and saying that, and it's reasonable, putting something as a document. If you have any questions, please, but it seems like they as well think it's a great start to this and trying to work on it.
Very good.
Okay.
Next item on the
Nice job.
next item on the agenda is the superintendent evaluation tool.
Now, here we go.
Well, that may not be for me to talk on, it may be more a matter of Lance and others, but I'll just share that when Gary had put that together, it made sense of looking at what does the board want? What does the board want of me? And these were the things that you wanted. So it really does make sense at the front end. I don't know if I necessarily agree that it's a long-term evaluation by any means, but it may serve for the first one, may serve for the second one, but I don't think it'd go beyond that. And I think that's maybe what your discussion needs to be, is does it serve the purpose for this coming one? Once again, you can look at that, and there's parts of it that go back to that subjectivity. We talked on that as far as what has the state done, and you question how it was created, but it was created to be objective. It wasn't, they were trying to take that away, the subjectivity, because subjectivity really creates a situation where if they're in Marty's building and then they're in Craig's building, would they get the same kind of evaluation if it's a subjectivity? If it's objective, it should be the same kind of evaluation if they're working from criteria that they're looking at. In this particular case, I don't think there's any problem, again, at the front end of this, of it being subjective, mixed with some objectivity as well.
And I think we do one at 6 months, and then we do another one at 6 months, first two anyway. So.
Yeah, you're still in a mode of getting this done by November, and the second one by March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess that's really up to you. You can make this simple of saying, yeah, Gary worked that out real well, and this is what we're going to do, this, at least for the first one.
I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Or you could change it altogether.
I think some of it, I'm in favor of using some of what Gary had there, and I don't know that this first one needs to be a real formal, thing. I would rather almost keep it more informal and kind of just go through some of this stuff and discuss it, especially for the 6-month one.
So something that I've used in the past is you have these expectations or goals or whatever you want to call them, and then the employee, in this case you, would kind of document how you felt you met these, and then there would be an opportunity for the supervisor, manager, whatever, to comment accordingly. Which I think would be helpful, because oftentimes there's many things that you're doing that we are not aware of.
Sure.
Relative to these.
Right.
Unless we've heard about them on your weekly emails or that sort of thing. So it's also regimentable for you. And it's a good twice a year, here's everything I've done and accomplished. So I don't know if we could
Fit that in there that actually
fit that
has
in
a-
there, and then sort of your
Well,
spot and our spot.
it's like, Sarah, it's like the document that exists right now for teachers.
Right.
There's a place for artifacts.
Right.
And you put in your documentation artifacts for the administrator who's evaluating you to end up, you're helping them by saying, these are the things I've been doing. This is the meetings that I've attended. This is the whatever that's been done at that particular time. So, yeah, that would be.
And by any means, I don't think it needs to be long. I mean, I think it's bullets, leads, activities, whatever it is. But
Sure.
It's a good idea.
I think that would be very helpful, again, because we don't have to know these parts that
Agreed.
we're busy with. that are very specific to this.
Okay.
We would keep.
Good. Any other questions on that? Okay. On to the next item, which is the board goal update.
I wanted to point out at our special board meeting a couple Saturdays back, we ended up working on the yellow, those yellow items up there. Those are the 5 goals that was decided upon, okay? The mission was decided that we weren't going to change the mission, which is green in the center. The goals that are around it, those are the ones that were identified. And then you end up having many other good ideas. Do you remember that? There was like 25 other good ideas that could have been goals, but I was saying they could also be converted into objectives. Well, those objectives, some of them are on this outside peripheral, along with administrators who have shared ideas too, and we put that in there. Now, this is all at the front end. It's not a matter of trying to say that in any way this needs to be worked on. I had no intention for this to be complete. It's more a matter of something to work from and see what I had in my vision of what we would work from. Then each one of these particular objectives for this, those objectives would be then tied into a plan that would have a timetable over here, and we'd create this for different, every building. We'd have enough of these created that we would insert a time frame that exists over the next few years and be accountable from the standpoint of, okay, we plan on doing this to tend to this particular goal. What are we going to do? Well, this goal has to do with capital outlay, the one I'm pointing to up there. Well, already this capital outlay goal, I know one that I could put up here, and that ends up being the meetings that we've had with Rusty, the meeting with James from BCS last week, the meeting that we might have with 2-3 board members coming up, because that ties in greatly to having a plan. And actually, there's only 3 that's up there, but I'm saying it may not be many at all. I mean, that one may be a matter of that goal becomes almost 1 or 2 objectives up there could end up suffice if that's where it boils down to, that you have a software item that ends up creating that particular plan. Then it's a matter of following through of utilizing it, over the next few years. But this is the idea. It's more a matter of then working off of it, still working with board members and administrators to try to. Some of these will be thrown off. I'm just saying that we need to decide how many objectives is realistic. Which ones, if they're in the right area. You'll see that one of them says bond election. Someone had put that down and tied it to financial, and then someone had a bond election and had it tied to capital outlay. Which makes sense. It could go either spot, but it's a matter of trying to figure out how they fit and truly being accountable with a time frame that exists and working from it. The intent too is at least once a month having on the agenda goals and objectives. It's not a matter of going any further than a month, trying to always have, it may be a 5-minute item, it could be a 30-minute item, but at least we're always tending to something on that, on the goals and the objectives that we've set, and trying to work from that is what the plan is. Now, I would suggest, we did say something about the goals we would wordsmith. We would try to make some changes with it perhaps and make them work a little bit better. I looked them over. I never really gave that direction to you to look them over and be prepared for tonight, because there's no need that it has to be changed. But some of them looked okay, but there was 1 or 2 that I would even suggest a single word change might be good. There was a word better at one point in one of them that I might end up saying excellent instead of better. Let's see, scroll down because you can see them better when they're red down below. Further, that's not it. A little further, a little further, a little further. The next one. Oh, where was better? there it is. We will foster better relations with community members and other organizations. And I was thinking maybe we should say not better, but just say that it's excellent. We will foster excellent relations with community members and other organizations. And instead of saying strive, maybe it's a matter of taking out to strive for, put in place organizational, by continuing organizational transparency. By continuing organizational transparency. I'm just saying that little bit of change of better to excellent and changing to strive for to organizational makes that, I think, a stronger goal. The wordsmithing. Now, there could be others, we will ensure adequate resources to provide optimal teacher-to-student ratios. I really want to change that word adequate because I hate it. But I couldn't find a word that fit better because I want to say excellent, superior. The problem is that finances keep you from really reasonably putting that down. And that's why adequate may be the word that has to stay there.
Necessary. Or appropriate.
Appropriate? Maybe the appropriate is a better word, but that's the wordsmithing of trying to change.
That's something we can work on as we...
And if you wanted to, we're in that mode. There's only 5 goals. So looking at them, I've just shared an idea with 1, 2. Do you want to look at the wording of the others to say, as we're moving on this, you can say, well, we've done a little bit of work each month of trying to end up. We will create a capital outlay plan that addresses current needs and contingencies. I didn't see wording that needed to be changed with that necessarily.
So the only 2 that stuck out to you?
Those were the 2. Those were the 2, but I don't know, that's up to you to change. That's not for me to change. That's for the board to.
Got a P in it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this was, believe me,
I took my red pen to sign.
I told her no. I said, this was stopped together in the last.
Was this sent out to us, or is this just a?
This was just put together in the last day or 2.
Okay.
No, it was not sent out to me.
Okay.
I wanted to just kind of show it and say it's more a matter so you can see, this is what I was viewing as when we say, okay, here's our mission, here's our goals, and of the goals, now we have objectives, but objectives mean nothing unless you really have a timetable to work from them. And you also need objectives that, again, you have buy-in of board members and also your leaders in the district of looking at that and going, yeah, this objective would make a difference for this goal. It could make this goal work. And how many of those are necessary? Because you could play this out and have 4 dozen objectives for each one of the goals, and that's just unrealistic. You need to have enough that would really tend to it and make a significant difference in the timetable that we're working on. And you can have others that are happening, but not necessarily that's listed in the plan. You would like to think some will stimulate other things happen a year from now or 2 years from now because of that.
Ron, we need to talk more about when we're going to use some of the perception surveys, because that may then help us.
That's exactly, thank you.
Well, because we don't want to lose sight of the new accreditation, and we don't want too many balls.
What she's referring to is KISA, our accreditation process that we have to work from, and those surveys that you had seen. You actually filled out one of them, and we need to get those out there to work from as well, and give us an idea of what some of those objectives can end up being. Your thoughts? Should we come back at the next meeting to approve maybe the 2 changes or some changes with goals? And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure this becomes more and more solid as we work. We know the mission statement's solid. The goals, when will they be solid so that we can then really start making the objectives concrete at that point? And then the timelines with the objectives. So the goals,
Yeah. I also like the fact of just where you said even before, of just having updates and stuff each as we
so
go
next
along.
board meeting, put down goals, and we'll act on maybe a little bit of change to say those are set.
Okay.
Good.
Very good. Any other questions on the board goal update? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the ACT scores. I think Shannon has some information for us on that.
Marty was coming to the table, he can as well. He's actually the one who officially receives these. Has to keep them embargoed until they're released. It's really positive. If you look at where we were this past year, our seniors, past 2016, there were 140 of them, and 85% of them took the ACT. That's a high percentage. If you look at the little blurb right underneath the paragraph, there's some of the things I highlighted. Well, the first thing I highlighted was the composite score for Kansas was 21.9, national average 20.8. We'll see at the bottom of that our composite score was 22.8, well above that. So that was good news. But the other thing to point out in that top part was just the Kansas, 74% of Kansas high school students on average take it. Nationally, 64. We had 85% of that senior class. And the other thing to note as well, because you can look at the graphs and see for yourself, is Marty, what's reported to you is the last ACT that student took, not their best. Typically, you would assume maybe they get better, and the last might be the highest, but they don't sort through them and report the highest. They report the most recent that was taken. And again, we talked, I think, a year ago just about how a large percentage of, as a school, as a district, take the ACT. I mean, you can see it has been 82%. And then instead of just a table, I did graph them there, and you can see our district is in the bold, and then the state there is in the lighter color. This is for English. Last year we were right at the state level, and then took a jump up to 22. And I know, Marty, some of what you've done, and maybe you could talk, I felt like as in looking at these 2014, we really have seen some growth since then. And I wondered, and that's why I wanted to share, I know you've really prioritized some department time where your teachers are doing some collaboration, and I know they focus on this. So talk a little bit about some things you've done.
Well, we really feel that we focus, when you align your curriculum, the curriculum is being taught and tested, and you give kids a chance to demonstrate their learning, I think, and you let them know that it's important. They really will buy into that. And right now we have very good kids who really trust that we're leading them in the right way. We've done several things in the area of ACT preparation. Of course, we've done the summer class for many years. We changed that a lot over the years because really the test and how kids can demonstrate their learning has changed on the test too. We also bring in Power Prep, ACT Power Prep, young women from Manhattan, and we've seen very good results with that also. We're working in our master schedule. What we tried to do is with our core areas, English, Math, Science, and Social Studies, each one of those departments every other day have a common plan. We think, and I know you've heard me say that, but we really believe that if we can't add days, and we can't add the number of in-service days and those things, it's very difficult to find that time. It's very important that we use our time on contract with as much efficiency as possible. And we feel strongly that that's been a real benefit for really every one of those core areas. You know, one might say, well, why don't you do that with all the electives? That's a whole nother animal because you have to have places for 800 kids to go to class. And so when we're locking down the math, science, language arts, or social studies department in one period, it's very difficult. The language arts is starting a reading from Marzano, vocabulary development. And there's a ton of research out there that suggests for your children and for really high school students as well, that development of vocabulary is very, very important. And it really goes along with success outside of school too, whether it's communication skills, writing, reading, research, whatever it might
And
be.
actually, it's a 6-12 book study, so our middle school language arts
Is sixth
department
grade.
is as well doing the same book study. And
Are they
then-
doing it in the middle school?
Yes, and so they're hoping to do the book study as a department this year, but then really go out and in their teen times or when they can, because vocabulary is across curriculum, all content areas. And so really learning the research, but then trying, and then sharing with other teachers how important and what the research says about vocabulary development, because that is a big piece of ACT, that kind of thing. So you can see the English there. If you have any questions, we can stop. Math as well. Above the state average, pretty level with where we were last year. Reading, a good job. And reading is tied somewhat with the social studies. And a lot of, I'm hoping we can see reading, you can see that's pretty close with the state, continue to improve. Mainly with the reading and writing workshop and building, what's the word I'm looking for? Not sustainability, maybe that's it. Just perseverance, kids being able to read for a longer period. When you talk to someone who comes out of that ACT, they are just done with the reading because it takes a lot of concentration. And in that reading and writing workshop, giving kids time to read and building up the stamina, the word I was looking for, hopefully we will see that as a ripple effect as they get into high school too.
One of the things we really emphasize in the area of social studies, if I were to ask Josh a historical question and allow him to have access to his iPad, there is nothing I could ask him that he couldn't find in 3 or 4 seconds, nor you could also. What's more important is that kids can develop meaning out of reading, take those facts, use primary and secondary sources, research it, and actually have a reason behind why you feel the way you do. We hear it in public, in the social media, that people speak from anger, frustration, but very little knowledge sometimes. It's important that we tool our kids to be able to have a belief, have a statement, but have good reasons why they feel that way and justify it with good research. We really think that social studies can help in writing absolutely as much as English language arts. And that's really been a very nice movement and that department too. So.
And science as well is listed, another sub-score, and then the overall composite. I know, Marty, you have a lot of records. You've been right for 3 years, I think, and as far back as you saw, this was the highest composite in those 23 years, keeping in mind that our largest percentage of kids also took that ACT window.
Should a higher percentage take it, tend to trend to go to private school.
Typically, yes, because if you just had your college bound, and a lot of the research will say that the ACT, you have to have certain classes that really prepare you. So the more academic and rigor and college prep classes you have, the higher your score will be. So not everybody takes the 3 sciences or the extra science. Those are usually those college bound. So when you get that larger percent, you're encompassing kids that maybe haven't had all those other classes. So.
It's probably longer than that, but I could only find 23 years of history, and ACT didn't have school records beyond that.
So Marty, congratulations.
That's awesome.
You, all the staff at
Congratulations to the
High,
kids. They
wow.
are doing awesome.
I mean, this was discussed at our retreat.
It's one of the objectives.
It's, okay.
I saw that, increase ACT scores, no pressure.
Check that one off, real.
Well, that's for next year, I bet.
We talk about the success of Hay schools out here in central campus, and this is a testament to the great work that all of you are doing, so.
I really think that our teachers take what they do seriously. And I think that every day they try to do their best. And if we do that, and we have a curriculum that's aligned to what kids really need, and those skills and knowledge-based things, we should be okay. And it was fun. I talked to 3 of my new teachers. We had 10 this year. 3 of them today. And they just said the kids are so respectful towards me. These kids are so interested. They're so curious.
that is fun to hear from a first-year teacher here, not necessarily a first-year teacher. One of them was actually. But from teachers who have taught elsewhere, and just, this is a good place to be. So it's. I'm sorry.
I said, I think that was a little bit different than when I was in Stuart. They were very well organized and spoke very fluently and seemed like they had a mission and a plan, and we're like,
Oh, you did well.
I don't remember.
But the challenge in student councils, government isn't about 5 people doing all the work. Leadership, you don't learn a thing if you do all the work. If these kids go out and lead other kids, then their leadership skills will be so much better. And kids don't have to be elected to be active in their school. We really stress that with our kids during class meetings this year. You don't have to worry about putting your name on the wall. Some people don't feel comfortable doing that. That's okay. But they're fun to work with. And I want to give credit where credit is due also. Misty Harrison, really should be energetic and just a can-do attitude, real good, and they are very, very good for that group of kids too. They're good at mentoring and with parameters, but certainly those 2 ladies have done an excellent job for us too. Really appreciate it.
Well, part of that though is your teachers and your administration being empowered. It was just like the student-led assembly basically that happened last Friday. That was because that student felt that you would allow her to work with her and empower her to do that. That was really the thing. And I know we had some publicity and news in the paper, but that was another great example. And it's a great job at that assembly. So. And I know I was at the middle school. That's not there. It's kind of throughout the district. So. Any questions about ACT scores?
Good job. Thanks, Marty.
Don't leave, Marty.
I'm not going to. I saw
that. No, you can stay right there.
Next item on the agenda is the Microsoft extended warranty.
Actually, the reason why is because you hate to come up to this and you're looking at the possibility of spending, $65,000, but I need to tell a story, and that's not my story. It's a story that I've gathered over the last, year or so of what's occurred. When I first came in, I ended up getting the story, partly from Marty and others, of how challenging last year was with the student machines. You have 800 some machines, and they're great machines in one respect, but there was a flaw in it. There was yellow screens, a lot of yellow screens that had to be turned back in. And they got switched out. I mean, they were tended to, but there was an issue with them, okay? And to such a number, when this was all started, the idea was, okay, we get a year warranty. Extending it 2 more years was $140,000. That amount of money could be taken care of by switching, if 80 machines for 3 years, each year for 3 years were destroyed and we had to buy new ones, that's up to $140,000. So let's just self-insure, basically. Instead of buying, using $140,000, let's just accept that we're going to have to buy some new ones, and that's how we're going to do it. I can see the logic in that. It's just a matter that first year was not good as far as the number of defects that were factory defects in this. What was so amazing is that Marty took the opportunity in a meeting or a conference he went, which is a tech conference, and the opportunity was there was a significant Microsoft administrator that was there, and he struck up a conversation with them. And in the whole process, ended up getting linked to them with email, and they communicated. And in the whole process, got to a point where they are willing. We're way past the opportunity of getting warranty on it. That was within the first couple months of buying them. But they are offering to us because of understanding what had happened and the interaction with Marty, that they will offer us. For those 800 and some machines, those extra 2 years for $65,000, which was a year ago $140,000. So we're at the spot because of the issues. Maybe we got them all tended to, but I don't think so. I think there's going to be some more that's going to happen this year. I would definitely recommend that we take advantage of this and look at it as an opportunity and spend the $65,000 for this warranty for 2 more years of trying to take care of these machines. Because right at this point, we have the warranties up. You know, the year that we had that was taking care of all those issues, we don't have it anymore. If they're willing to give us the 2 years for basically half the price of what it would have been a year ago in buying it, that's where we're at, and that's what I'm bringing to you.
What was technically budgeted? Because I know, like you had said, it was talked about that we would self-fund. What was actually technically budgeted per year as far as for the self-funding and that, as far as doing it?
I guess a third of the $140,000.
Because I know part of it, we went with that solution based on it was a little bit cheaper than some of the other ones, and it would allow us to use some of the extra money to self-fund that.
What I remember Brian talking to us about potentially was that technology fee that's being paid by the students being approximately, is it 32, is that $25,000 to $30,000. That would be there to absorb some of the costs.
Per year?
Yes, sir.
So if that's the case, then you're right, that fee basically takes care of you dividing that by 2 years. That fee takes care of the warranty.
It may be just maybe a little bit short.
Right.
Is it the same warranty we have this first year?
Yes, it is.
It is.
But it's important to understand that that warranty is factory issues. I mean, it's not a matter if a student dropped the machine. I mean, if there was, that warranty doesn't take care of that.
Nor did the first year.
Yeah.
So any kind of accident, if we use it or anything like that, obviously the kid has to pay.
Right.
So this would, just so I understand, this would be 16, 17, 17, 18.
That's correct.
So it's.
You take care of this year.